Alright, finally, we're getting to the good stuff here, and that's amps and tone. Amps and tone, the tone portion is the part that's inspiring. It's the sound that your instrument is actually making. So for instance, sometimes you get your tone out of an amplifier, or in the case of an acoustic, you get the tone from the acoustic. So that brings us into amps, okay? Amps have lots of knobs on them, and sometimes people look at it and don't know what to do with it, so that's what we're going to talk about now. The first thing that we're going to want to do, obviously, is to take our guitar and get it plugged in. So we have a input jack at the bottom of this particular guitar, and we're just going to go ahead and plug that in. Alright, which brings us then to the amplifier. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start on this particular amp. We have a power knob. Obviously, that's going to be important. We're going to be taking the power knob and turning it on, and almost always it indicates that it's on. Some type of light will shine, and then we're going. Okay, on this particular amp, once again, we have headphones. Obviously, you know what that's for. You could plug in your headphones so you don't bother anybody while they're sleeping. You can play all day long. Next, we have a line out. That's a recording type thing or playing live type thing. So as a beginner, you probably won't need that right now. Next, we have a button called, or a knob rather, called reverb. Reverb is, you know, when you're outside and you shout out loud and then you hear your voice back? That's called reverb or echo. It's the same kind of thing. Or if you're in a big room and there's a lot of echoing going on, same kind of thing. Then we get a volume knob. Obviously, that's turning the guitar up from the amplifier. We get a treble knob. Treble is referring to kind of a pitch in a sense, not necessarily, but it's close enough. Treble is the high sound. It creates a higher frequency, if you will. The contour knob is controlling mids, and mids are like, everybody has mids in their voice. It's in between, obviously, bass and treble. Next, we have the bass knob, which obviously bass is bass. It's controlling lower frequencies. Then we have a gain knob, of which we'll deal with in just a minute or two here. Then we come over here. Now on this particular amplifier, we have two sections. This one is called channel 1, and this section that I actually just skimmed over is called channel 2. Okay, the first section we'll actually be dealing with today is channel 1. Channel 1 now has a treble, a bass, and a volume. And last but not least, that brings us all the way to the left side of the guitar. And in the left side of the guitar, you're going to see there's a little jack here that says input. That's where you plug the other end of your guitar in. So you just go ahead and plug that right in, and we're off and running. Okay? And then here we have a channel select, which once again we'll talk about in just 1 second. And last but not least, we have a foot switch. Alright, now that we've got our basic layout of how the amp works, we're just going to run through it. Okay, so the first thing is channel 1. Okay, this is becoming more of a common feature these days, where you have several different channels on an amp. Some even have 4, some still have 1, and that's just as good as anything as well. On this particular one, channel 1 is typically a clean channel, meaning when you play it, you're going to get just kind of a natural sound that the instrument makes. Okay, so the first thing to deal with here, once again, you want to basically start turning knobs. However, one knob you're going to want to be careful with, especially if you're living in your parents' house, is the volume knob. Start with it off and hit your guitar slowly and turn it up until you've reached a level that's all right to be used in your house. These things can blow your ears out, by the way, and cause something called tinnitus, and you can research that if you're interested. One thing that we're going to be following that with then is going to be the bass. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the bass and the treble all the way off, and let's just see what actually happens there. So I'm going to start with the bass knob. See that the bass knob on the clean channel adds what we call body, or it just adds like a roundness to the sound. It just makes the sound pleasant to listen to. So you find a place where you desire it. Leave mine about somewhere around there maybe. Then we come over to the treble. And you just do the same thing on the same string just to see what happens. If you heard that, but the treble starts to add a little more clarity to the sound. So kind of helps it to cut through a little bit. Now let's see what actually happens if we turn the bass off and just turn the treble up. Kind of starts to sound almost like an AM radio a little bit. Okay, so what you want to do is find a balance between these two. So I'm going to find somewhere around there. It's a little much for me. I'm going to leave it around there. Maybe back the bass down just a little. And then I'm going to go ahead and play. See what that sounds like. I think that has about the sound that I'm looking to get. And another point to bring up is the only way to really decide what you like is, of course, to do it over and over. Once I've played on this sound for a half hour, I might not like it anymore, in which case it'll change. Over time, you'll find the settings that you like and blah, blah, blah. You'll come to a place where you found kind of what you're looking for, hopefully. Okay? Now, another thing, I'm going to bring you back down to the left side of this particular, actually it's the right side, of this particular amplifier, to this reverb. It's a pretty common thing to add reverb to a clean sound. It just, once again, it makes the sound more. There's just, more of the guitar. It's echoing. It's repeating itself. So, once again, I suggest you make some noise on the guitar and turn the knob and see what happens. Now, a good way to check for reverb is to just hit the string and stop it. See how it echoes and reverbs? Okay, so that's a lot of reverb. Okay, and that's a little reverb. Okay, so once again, you want to find your balance. And there you have it. Okay, which then brings me to my next channel. I'm just going to clear this reverb off, and I'm just going to cancel all this stuff out and just start fresh so that we know where we're at. Now we're going to be looking at channel 2, which is typically the gain channel. So what I'm going to do here is, over on the left side here, I have a button called channel select, which is on most amps. Sometimes it's red, and that gives you a good indicator, or it's just going to say distortion on it. What you want to do is push that button in. Okay, now what happens is your amp's sound changes. Now I'm going to be dealing with channel 2. In channel 2, I have a volume. Turn that up first until you start to get a sound. Aha. The trick to this amp is that if the gain knob doesn't have any gain, well, then there's no volume in the volume section. All amps are different, so you'll have to decide that. And what happens is, when you hit a chord, you'll find it to start to change the sound. It's not quite so clean anymore. Okay, so what's going to happen here is, first I'm going to deal with the gain knob. And the gain knob, as you turn it up, your amp's going to get louder, and what it's also going to do is it's going to start to distort your amp. until you've reached a full gain level, which then sounds like that. Okay, so these different sounds will be used for different styles. Also, in this overdrive, it's called an overdrive or a distortion channel, is the same knobs. The bass and the treble have the same function. The contour knob is a mid sound. And of course the treble. Alright? Too much treble on a distortion sound sometimes can hurt people's ears, so be careful there. Okay? And also to this particular channel, it's a good idea, you know, like if you're going to do some lead guitar, once again, add some reverb to it. Okay? And that concludes the amp. The important things to think about are really the volumes and this gain knob. Find the gain that's really appropriate for the setting you're in. And then with the equalizing knobs, bass, treble, and mid, or contour in this case, find a balance. Listen to it. You know, if you're not listening to it, which you should be because you're playing music, if you're not listening to it, you're going to find that people are going to be like, oh, that tone's all right. All right, so check out your amp. Turn the knobs, listen closely, and develop a sound that you like and that inspires you to want to play. All right? Okay. A couple more points that I just want to make real quick here, and just some other ideas for you to think about. Probably the one most important thing that you can do and remember forever and ever is if your amplifier is on and it's loud and you unplug your guitar, there's going to be some unhappy people in the room, especially if you're plugged into other people's equipment as well. What's going to happen, I'm at a low volume, so do what I say, not what I do. I'm at a low volume, so I'm going to go ahead and unplug my guitar just to show you. Imagine that at an extremely loud volume. That can potentially blow your speakers up. It just leads to all kinds of bad things. So do not unplug your guitar when your guitar is turned loud. It's just a no-no. Okay? Another thing that I want to talk about, now that we've got some things together here, a clean channel. A clean channel with a little bit of reverb is a good sound for a jazz. Now, in terms of the guitar, like if you're going to play on a jazz sound, typically what you'll get is maybe like your guitar flipped to the neck pickup, and then you take the tone knob and roll it off. Give myself a little more volume. So once again, I'm going to flip to the neck. And then I'm going to take my tone knob and give it a roll, and it just kind of calms the sound a little. In which case you can get more of a jazzy kind of sound. Okay, so that's kind of a jazzy sound. A typical like strumming kind of sound would be basically the same setting. You find what's comfortable for you. Of course, you know, work with your treble and whatnot. But like a strumming kind of sound, maybe like a clean rock guitar type thing or something along those lines, would be back to the what's called the bridge pickup, because it's next to the bridge. And this one's, by the way, called the neck pickup, but you just kind of leave the guitar where it is at full on and strum away. Okay, so those are a couple of sounds that you can use. Another thing, like if you want to do a finger style thing, sometimes it's cool to just flip to just the neck pickup with no tone whatsoever. Okay, just as an example. All right, and then I'm going to come back over real quick to the distortion channel. I'm going to flip the distortion on, and I'm going to turn the gain way down. And you can hear that it's not very distorted at all. Okay, and sometimes you can get away with strumming some like rock chords. Okay. Also, this sound is a good sound for like a blues style. All right. And once again, I still have a little bit of reverb on there. It just adds a little bit of, it's a little comfortable to play. However, don't rely on that. You have to learn to play the guitar without reverb as well, because you're not always going to have it. And then that brings me back to, you know, starting to get into a higher gain sound. In this case, I'm just going to take like a medium gain. A lot of times on like a gain sound, people will leave their toggle switch once again on that bridge position. It's a pretty popular position. And, you know, you might hear more kind of like a... Okay, more of like a rock type sound, just a mid rock. And then of course, pushing the gain higher brings you into more of a heavy metal kind of sound. One thing I find in heavy metal is people probably push their gain too much and it's just fuzz and not any guitar sound at all. So too much gain can be a bad thing. Okay, and that brings us through just a couple of things to think about for some of the styles you might be interested in getting into. The amp sound and the sound of your electric guitar are real indicators of, oh my god, yeah, it does sound authentically like that style. Okay, so take some time once again, twist those knobs and develop your tone, and people will like to listen to it.